Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hardlight Vedic Astrology. Today I'm going to talk about the new moon or Amavasya that's happening on 24th of July, 2025. This talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the theme for this moment is under construction, coming soon. So let's take a look at what we got here. I note beforehand the information presented is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support, and you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. So if you're new to the channel, just a few announcements and some orientation. So auto dubbing is now available on the channel in 8 different languages. They're listed here. All of my teaching videos are in my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see double asterisk, that means there's a teaching video on that topic if you'd like to learn more. Also, my channel is all about playlists, so videos like this on moon phases is my planetary transits or Gochara playlist. But there are others like planets, grahas, houses, bhavas, that sort of thing. And then if you'd like to learn astrology by looking at famous birth charts, I would check out my Birth Chart Archive List 2025 video that lists all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel, people, places, and moments in time. Some of my latest videos, in case you've missed any: June solstice plus next 6 months, Dakshinayana, planetary transits or Gochar for July 2025, birth chart for the 14th Dalai Lama in succession, and then Capricorn constellation or Makara rashi. And then if you're new to all this, I have a list at the bottom of the slide of the videos I would watch to really get a good foundation, so you could start learning Vedic astrology or at least get more out of talks like this. Okay, so this is actually my second time trying to record the video, which will make sense when we start talking about the fifth house. But we'll get there. So anyway, so we're talking about the new moon or Amavasya, which is the 24th of July, 2025. This particular chart is set for 15:11 in the afternoon Eastern Daylight Time, which is New York time. That's the time zone I live in. So what we have here, we have a North Indian style chart. So to orient you, the top diamond in the middle, that's the ascendant, rising sign, first house, lugna, all different names for the same thing. And that sets the tone for the rest of the chart. So the physicality of something or someone, the personality of something or someone, and that little 7 in the bottom corner, that means that there's that's the 7th zodiac signs constellation of the zodiac, which is Libra Tula rising. So we have a Libra rising or Tula Lugna here for this chart. Okay. To get to the other houses, you count counterclockwise up and to the left. So the second house would be that upside down triangle on the upper left side with 8 in the bottom corner. That 8 refers to the 8th constellation of Scorpio or Vrishika. That's great. Okay, so what we have here is just a bit of context first, and I'll go through house by house, and then I'll be going through the amshas or subdivisional charts, depending on how much detail you really want. So the day lord here is Jupiter, and the hora lord is Sun. So that's already telling us something here. Jupiter is a planet that represents spirituality, and it's in the 9th house representing spirituality. So it looks like spirituality is an important piece here. And the hora lord is Sun. Sun represents a career, but it also represents like the head of a enterprise, like a king or a president, that sort of thing. So what we're seeing here already with Jupiter and Sun is spiritual leadership of some kind. Okay, then the dasha period. The dasha period is a planetary period. So, sorry, my voice is already dry. I got about halfway through this talk, and then my software crashed, so I had to start all over. So I might have to do this in pieces, so forgive the if there was any breaks in the audio. That's why. So the dasha period, a planetary period, is Saturn, Ketu, Saturn, Venus. Saturn and Ketu are 2 separatist type planets. Saturn represents obstacles, delays, chronic problems, that sort of thing. Ketu is more of a, rebellious or unusual, unexpected, unpredictable planet. It's fiery though. So it's kind of Saturn is more isolation through distance and slowness, and Ketu is more of a trajectory, like more of a fiery type of ending or change. And then Venus here we have. So Venus is the planet representing like social grace and artistic endeavors, creativity, diplomacy, that sort of thing. Um, and so what we see is Saturn is in the sixth house of acute problems. Saturn's really strong. It's retrograde. That line under Saturn means retrograde for Saturn. So in retrogression in Vedic astrology means the planet's stronger because it catches the eye when you look at it in the sky. Um, and then Saturn is swa by star because it's in the star of Saturn, so it's strong that way as well. So it's got a double primary strength, we would say. And Saturn is in the sixth house of acute problems, so this could be acute problems healing pretty long term, actually. And then we've got K2 up in the 11th house. The 11th house is about clubs, group societies, income as well. And Mars is just cross K2. You can see they're about a degree apart. So that means that there was some sort of separation or change. It could be a breakdown, it could be a breakthrough, depending on your view of it. That's happened regarding 11th house matters, which is clubs, groups, societies, so secular groups, and then also income as well. And then Venus here is in its own sign in the 8th house. And Venus, you can see, as well as the Lugna, are both Sunday. Sunday means that a planet's about to change or has just changed sign, usually within 1 or 2 degrees. I take 2 degrees, so technically it's 1 degree. But you can see what that brings is instability because it means that you're crossing signs. And when you cross signs, it means you're changing elements. Like when you go from Libra to Scorpio, you're going from air to water, so head to heart. And when you're going from Taurus to Gemini, like Venus is about to do, you go from earth to air. So tangible situations to ideas. Okay. Venus is strong. Venus is what we call the lugnatia of the chart, so the ruling planet of the chart. It's strong because its own sign of Taurus, which it rules. But Venus is looking for something. So Venus, because Venus is in Mrigashirsha, the nakshatra, seeking and searching. A nakshatra, if you're not familiar, there are 27 more or less nakshatras, and each one has a different energy. Each night, nakshatras are also called lunar mansions. So each night the moon goes through a different one, and after 27 nights, you get a lunar month. Okay. So Venus is a nakshatra lunar mansion of Mrigashirsha, which is symbolized by a deer's head. So you can think of like the deer wandering through the forest with its ears pricked up, listening and wandering around, looking for leaves or whatever. So Venus is looking for something, but it's going quite deep because it's in the 8th house of deep psychology, as well as research, as well as esoterica. So it looks like since we're picking up Venus energy here, Venus is going deep in its own psychology and researching answers in probably alternative places because of Saturn, the problems that Saturn has brought, because Saturn is aspecting this Venus. So Venus, the ruling planet's been challenged. That means the whole chart's challenged. Has been for a while, but now it's seeking some sort of practical solution, looks like, to these challenges. Okay, so there's some sort of change of self because of the position of Venus, but also some sort of change in groups. Part of this might be because looks like a tendency to isolate because of Saturn and K2 again. K2's in the 11th house, so there's a change with groups here. But then Saturn is bringing like acute problems, so this might make somebody more tired or sad, depressed, anxious, that sort of thing. There's going to be a drag here in Venus. But there's also going to be some sort of deep structural change because Saturn's in the nakshatra of Uttara Bhadrapada, which are the back legs of the funeral pyre. So transformation, things turning over, things turning to dust, letting go, releasing the soul from the body, that sort of thing. Uttara Bhadrapada, though, the back legs of the funeral pyre has this energy of also being somewhat stepping back from that. surrendering to it, being a bit objective to it. So rather than fighting the process and just it being complete, unadulterated transformation and destruction, it's like, is there a way to contain the chaos or create some sort of meaning, or surrender to the process so that it's not so, destructive, you know? So a lot of change and probably unexpected change are related to how somebody's socializing or not. There might be some isolation here. And then this dasha period, and again, the dasha period, if I didn't mention it, that's when you can think of these planets as being more influential or kind of active, that sort of thing. Dasha period is changing September 1st to Saturn, Ketu, Mercury. So now you have all three separation planets, Saturn, Ketu, and then Mercury's separation is because it's more of a analytical mind type of planet here. Okay. The other thing that's important here is Saturn, Ketu, Mercury. If this was a person's chart and they were born into Saturn, then the next planets after Saturn are Mercury and Ketu. So and Saturn's a long period, Ketu's a shorter period, and Mercury's a long period. So basically, this person would go through Saturn, Mercury, Ketu, all of these isolationist planet energies, and then finally get to Venus, a social planet, probably about age 30 or so. So this might be somebody who seems kind of aloof, frankly, quite a bit, and then somehow, sort of magically, when they hit their Venus period, they become interested in maybe it looks like maybe an alternative group, that sort of thing, rather than more secular group. So, yeah. So again, and then Venus is different. Because Venus is more of an emotional planet and diplomatic planet, and Mercury is more of an analytical planet here. Can represent communication and thoughts and decisions and business as well, and speech, education. So Mercury is going to bring those sorts of energies to Saturn and Ketu. So again, these issues that are coming up, and also like separation or change of social groups here. Yeah, then the Lagna nakshatra is in Vishaka. Vishaka is related to you can think of that as victory at all costs. So there probably are costs here, I would think, because again, at least in some societies, it's not always seen as a great thing to be introverted or to be kind of separate or spend a lot of time alone. But it depends on who you are, right? I mean, if you're going deep into Ayurveda or Jyotish or yoga or something like this person might do, um, because they're going deep within the self to find answers, then they would be, just by being engaged in those activities, they tend to be more introverted type of activities. So it is what it is. There's probably, again, they would be, again, successful in it, but, again, at what cost? And everybody has to decide that for themselves, right? So then the moon and the sun, those nakshatras are both the same. Pushya. Pushya is pretty nice here. Pushya is symbolized by a cow's udder. So this can bring like nurturing and stabilizing in a tangible way, both the mind, emotions, body, all of that. And moon and sun are in the 10th house of day-to-day activities and work and reputation. So when we have sun, moon, Mercury together like this could be engaging in daily activities that are nurturing and stabilizing to the health, which is symbolized by sun, and also the moon, which symbolizes the moon, especially the emotional mind. But this could also mean work, like career. So this could be somebody who works in this field, like maybe because of the challenges they've been through, they need to do some sort of like paid work related to all this. Yeah, this could also be like, especially with moon in its own sign, Cancer. This could be like, stabilizing or creating stabilizing home. That's very nurturing. Yeah, so that's what's going on there. So again, just to give you some general attributes of this chart, but you can see that, especially the reason why I said that it seems like this moment in time is about like under construction coming soon is because, again, we have Saturn aspecting Venus. Venus is the ruling planet for the chart. And the lugna, the rising sign, as well as the ruling planet are both Sunday. So there's some sort of instability here, some challenge with Saturn aspecting Venus. Um, but then it's like, and Venus is going through, the eighth house, thinking about itself, and it's seeking itself. Mrigashirsha energy is seeking itself. So there's some sort of like new identity that's coming forward, after or because of these changes and challenges that have come up. But you can see that Venus is about to emerge into Gemini here. And the ninth house is again religion, government, authority, institutions as well. So it looks like, especially because Venus is the practical counselor, joining the spiritual counselor Jupiter in the uh, ninth house. It looks like somebody who's about to emerge into some sort of counseling position that's both tangible and spiritual, some sort of institution. And this could be the work that they do. It could be like working for some institution. It could be creating their own institution. This could be some sort of because the ninth lord of authority has gone to the 10th house. This could be some sort of subcontractor for the government. It looks like related to mental emotional health because the Mercury, Moon, the two mind planets are with Sun, and Moon and Sun are with Pushya, so stabilizing health, mental health. And Mercury's in Aslesha nakshatra, which is symbolized by a snake. So that can be like snakes symbolize transformation, but also snakes can be like a kind of draw people's attention, and people become, suddenly very alert to things like, oh, you snake, like they usually, they might say it or scream or shout or whatever they do, bringing attention because snakes are mesmerizing. Snakes are also used in healing and medicine a lot to symbolize healing and medicine. So this could be like some sort of alert system related to or announcement, bringing attention to, you know, um, stabilizing homes, and, health, mental health, and that sort of thing. And that's what this person potentially could be coming in to consult, um, some sort of enterprise or institution related to that kind of work. Okay. So just a little bit more on some context. I usually bring in, usually they're like religious holidays. I guess this is a religious holiday as well, although it's not just. It's becoming broader than just a religious holiday, but it's called Pioneer Day. I'd never heard of it before, but I found it, so I kind of looked into it to see if it was relevant, and it seems to be. So Pioneer Day is related to there's a religious group in the mostly in the United States. I don't know if they're only in the United States, but yeah, sort of marginalized group, and they're very strong. They have a very strong presence in Utah, one of the western states, in the United States. And apparently, in 1847, there was a trek of Mormons from Nebraska, so the middle of the country, out to Utah, um, to try to find a place where they could express themselves and their religion, because they were marginalized and pushed around, and like they had a temple burned down. They were living like mostly in the middle of the country, and they kind of kept getting pushed around. And so they were seeking religious freedom. And so there were a group of them that started at the beginning of April of the year 1847 and went for almost 4 months, April, May, June, July, almost 4 months, trekking like from morning till night, 6 days a week, until they got to Utah. And then they decided that was the place. So this is the Pioneer Day, was the day that their leader, Brigham Young, entered the valley where Salt Lake City is currently. Okay. The first few people in that caravan, that wagon train to go out west, actually got there a couple days before Brigham Young was on it. It was on a later wagon because there was a sick wagon. A bunch of people were getting what they call Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is a tick-borne illness. and he was one of them. So he came in a little, like a couple days on this day, but it was the first people was like I think 2 days before this. But anyway, they celebrate it, on the 24th of July of actually making it to their new home, which is again what we're talking about here, like the ability to um, live in freedom in a safe and nurturing place to express emotions and express your spirituality and that sort of thing. So, so what was even more interesting to me though is when I was really reading about this is that apparently 25% of the people, quote unquote, people on this trek from Nebraska out to Utah. So again, this is a 4-month long trek in wagons through unknown territory, country, like Native Americans and rattlesnakes and all this kind of stuff. Um, this is like the wild, wild west we're talking about here. 25% of the people in this trek were less than 8 years old, which is like sort of a shocking figure, I think. And the other thing is that of the adults, so the 75% of adults that were in this trek, or 75% of the people of this trek who were adults, 54% of them were under the age of 18. So if you take all of those numbers, the 54 of 75% and the 20, that means most of these people, more than half the people on this trek were under the age of 18. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. I mean, I know people didn't tend to live that long back in the day, but I was like, these are mostly kids doing this. Now a lot of people with a lot of life experience, so I was like, wow. I mean, that was shocking to me. But it also makes sense because, again, part of what we're talking about here in the ninth house, we have Jupiter. Again, and the nakshatra Jupiter is in Ardra. Ardra is symbolized by a storm cloud. So this can be like, really strong, sudden transformation, like a storm rolling through. But Jupiter represents spirituality. So this is spiritual transformation here. And then Jupiter is in the ninth house of authority. So some, really transformational spiritual leader. But also children. Jupiter represents children. So transformation of Jupiter, transformation of children, which is what that trek would have done, you know. So, yeah, and then apparently even today they have a thing called Pioneer Trek, which some kids, age I think 14 to 18, they'll do for a few days. They go out and go on like some hikes and stuff like that with, only old-fashioned bare essentials to sort of understand a little bit what that 4-month trek, original trek was about. So they still do that as a way to celebrate Pioneer Day. And then I did actually look at the chart for July 24th, 1847, just to see what the sky pattern was. Jupiter was in Ardra again. So actually, this is a Jupiter return for Pioneer Day and the original Pioneer Day. And also, Sun was in Pushya. So those two planets were in the same nakshatra, same constellation, same nakshatra. Interesting difference, though, it was Mars was not in Leo, where it currently is, but Mars was in Ashwini. Ashwini is the first nakshatra in Aries, so the 7th house here. 7th house is about path forward in life. And Mars is a rebellious planet, and Aries represents, like, uncultivated land. So this is them physically pushing their way forward into new land. And then Ashwini is symbolized by the Chimera twins, who are the celestial healers. And they literally ride around on horses. So I was like, I mean, I know we're talking about 5,000-year-old, like, Vedic astrology, but, like, some of these things are very literal. You've got this caravan of sad, transformational spiritualists and children, or spiritualist children even, who are physically pioneering their way through unknown territory to heal so that they can express themselves, fully in their spiritual beliefs or whatever. So I was like, wow, that kind of blew me back. But, Vedic astrology does that all the time for me. So that's part of why I do it. Because it's like every time I see a new chart, I'm like, wow, really? It never really gets old. So that's really, I don't know. So anyway, so there's some background there for you. So let's get into the chart house by house now. Okay, so let's start at the top with the lugna. So we have a Sunday, unstable Libra, Tula rising, Tula lugna here, movable air sign, Charavayu, a lot of ideas going on here. It's aspected by a Swa Jupiter. Swa, not because of its sign or its star, but it's in a star parivartana, an exchange of stars with Rahu, because Jupiter is in a star of Rahu, and Rahu is in a star of Jupiter. So that will actually bring strength to Jupiter for a while it's in Ardra and Jupiter, and Rahu's in Purva Bhadrapada. That'll make Jupiter stronger. So this storm cloud Jupiter is aspecting the lugna here. So again, this is about spiritual transformation, or potentially a transformation of law, or transformation of children. It could be all three. The reason why is that it's in the ninth house. The ninth house represents government, authority, religion, higher education, but also grandchildren here. So this could also be like transformation of um, children, and like legacy is what I'm looking at here. And Jupiter represents law, so this could be some sort of transformational law related to children as well, going on here, depending on everybody's individual situation. So it looks like there's multiple ideas going on here regarding spiritual transformation, potentially sad children, because Ardra, that energy, can also be symbolized by a drop of water from a teardrop. So Ardra has this natural energy related to sadness, but also psychology. So, child psychology, that sort of thing. This could be it as well. But again, the Lugnatia, the ruling planet for the chart, and Libra is Venus. So Venus is deep down here in the eighth house of deep psychology. So Venus is doing some research, just checking some stuff out, because it's in Mrigashirsha, that's seeking energy. It's looking for new ways, new alternative ways of doing things. And it might be a business idea, because Libra can represent the marketplace, potentially. So this might be like developing some kind of institution that's a subcontractor for the government. So, or some sort of government advocacy program. Because once Venus goes into Gemini, you're going to have the two advisors, the Jupiter, the spiritual advisor, and Venus, the practical worldly advisor, together in the ninth house of authority there. So either a standalone institution, but probably with government contracts, because the ninth house lord is gone to the 10th house. Okay, so multiple ideas regarding spiritual transformation, sad children, children's psychology. The self is unsettled. Again, Jupiter can also represent teacher, speaker, and this can be, again, some sort of business, because of Libra. Beautiful, attractive alternative ideas regarding transformation of self. So this could be like, sharing ideas of how to overcome difficulties, like how to create more positive self-identity after challenge, that sort of thing. Yeah. So again, for the individual, but again, it might be some sort of work that they do, or business that they own, that kind of thing. The Lugnatia is a Sunday Swa Venus in Mrigashirsha, with that aspected by retrograde Saturn and Uttara Bhadrapada. And this is in the eighth house, which is a Mokshasthana, a house of freedom. So, if this is a person, this is somebody who is motivated primarily by freedom, rather than like, tangible assets or even enjoyment. So, so they're also seeking ideas about some sort of new self and processing history here. This is that Saturn aspecting Venus. They're looking for solutions to all these challenges that they've been through. And it's been a slog here for Venus, this Venusian person. But Saturn going retrograde, they're going deeper into the past to look at, past, um, troubles and challenges, to see what can be uh, a better solution, better solutions moving forward. These might also be practical, marketable ways of doing these things, like very tangible, not just sort of reading about ideas or thinking about ideas. That can be helpful. But again, this is a Venusian person. They're going to be more interested, typically, although they do have Jupiter aspecting the Lugna. They're going to have some interest in not just ideas, but in how do we make them reality, some sort of tangible reality. And again, it looks like this person is looking for ways to transform the hardships of the past into some sort of gentle grace, because the Mrigashirsha energy, that deer energy, that Venus is in. Venus is a diplomatic, social grace planet, but Mrigashirsha is a gentle deer-like energy. So yeah. Then we have a few yogas here. These are planetary combinations that give extra meta effects for a chart. We have pravraja yoga here. That's a life focused yoga with that Mercury, Moon, Sun going on in the 10th house. That's going to bring a life focus to work, and the daily activities. And it's hard to say if that's dominated by Moon or dominated by Sun. It's both in Saturn and Mercury. Maybe Mercury even. It's a little hard to say because Mercury is strong because it's in its own star in retrograde. So Mercury's strong. Moon is strong because it's in its own sign, but it's combust because it's a new moon. And then Sun is it's in a friend sign, and the landlord is strong because it's a swan moon, but the moon is combust. So Sun can dominate because the other thing is Mercury, when it's going retrograde, like in a day or two after this, Mercury is going to be combust as well. So you're not going to see Mercury and Moon. You're only going to see Sun, which is, again, leadership here. Yeah, it's hard to say, but the thing is, the daily work is something that you can't see, like a tangible thing. It looks like it's more like advocacy type work, like mental, emotional type work. Because Mercury and Moon represent the mind. Mercury is the analytical mind, and Moon is the emotional mind. So other yogas here, you have solar and lunar yogas here, support for Moon and Sun, bringing eloquence and nobility. You have a Parvata and Kahala yoga. These are planets that bring leadership. And not just leadership, but like leaderships, So altogether, focus, support, eloquence, leadership. The chidra grahas here are planets of vulnerability. And these are Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn twice over. So especially since we're running Saturn as a Mahadasha, major planetary period. Sorry, I've just been talking a long time because I had to do this twice. I'm trying to keep myself here. Saturn being a double Chitragraha, that's going to be a lot of tough, long haul, slugging energy, frankly. Challenges, obstacles here. Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury and Jupiter communication, news, also education, children. So these and Jupiter's spirituality, speaking about, these sorts of issues. Looks like, there's some sort of child advocacy work that this person might do. And then we have the yogi, aviyogi, duplicate yogi. So yogi is the moon, aviyogi is Mercury, duplicate is Saturn. Yogi and duplicate yogi are planets that indicate some sort of wealth. So the wealth here is this moon, this like emotional mind, this nurturing emotional mind, home energy that moon brings in this chart. And the duplicate, which might sound kind of funny, is a Saturn. So actually the obstacles that are presented here are valuable. So when I see this, it reminds me, like, sometimes I'll go through something like a medical thing or emotional thing in my own life, and I work my way through it, and then it's kind of funny. It's almost like people smell it on me. And so all of a sudden I'll see in my practice all these people with basically the same problem who show up like 2, 3, 5 of them in a row. It's hard to miss. And it's almost like life or nature, the universe has put me through this, some sort of experience so that I have more inside, like, insight into the situation so that I'm able to help other people go through it. It's kind of like that where, so for me, like, going through challenges like that is helpful because I counsel people in various ways, so yeah, that's that. And then what's also interesting, the Aviyogi here is Mercury, and Mercury is like, the analytical, logical mind. So it seems like, being too in your head, analytical, might be a bit of a drawback here. Um, but when you get all three of these together, Moon, Mercury, the mind planets with Saturn, so obstacles, mental, emotional obstacles here is what we're dealing with. So then if we look at the second house lord is Mars. It's an Uttara Phalguni, just symbolized by a hammock. And the star of Uttara Phalguni is Sun, and then Mars is in a Sun sign. So Mars is swimming in the Sun Pushya energy. So that's actually kind of nice because Mars and Ketu, usually they just crossed. And so when you get Mars and Ketu together, they can be an explosive energy. But with Sun being influencing Mars and it being in Pushya, Mars is going through this transformation, the 11th house of probably clubs and group societies and people you associate with in a nurturing way, like in a self healing type of way. So there's some, like, it's like it kind of softens the edge of all this, even if there's a separation going on here. And then, so Mars aspect its own house, second house, and it's also aspected by the Swa Venus. So there's passionate speech, transformative speech going on here, leadership of family, and there's something beautiful and enjoyable here, but and purposeful here. This could also be land assets because the second house can be assets. So, this is somebody who speaks about healing, in very, again, deeply transformative way. Yeah. And probably does this like, uses their speech to talk to marginalized groups, you know. So yeah. Third house lord is Swa, Jupiter through the star exchange with Rahu, aspects its own house, and then we have this really strong Saturn aspecting as well. This could be writing and publishing about, psychology, sadness, loss. Um, so not just like advising, um, but publishing, like, I don't know, articles or books or that sort of thing about this sort of deep transformation of, for children's psychology or sad children or spiritual transformation through challenge, that's going on here. And this could also be this sort of transformation going on for third house people, which are siblings, neighbors, and friends. So, and there could also, like, there's a separation going on with Mars and Ketu in the 11th house of clubs, groups, and society, Saturn aspecting on the third house. There might be also like distance between this person and siblings, neighbors, friends. So, and again, because they started off in Saturn and will be going through Saturn, Mercury, Ketu, they might feel a bit, displaced here, this person. And that's maybe another reason why they keep going deep into the eighth house esoterica stuff and research. Because they're a seeker. They're essentially a seeker person of ideas more than relationships, although they are looking for some sort of place where they can feel at home and feel comfortable mentally and emotionally. A healing place. Then the fourth house lord is Saturn, and that lord is gone to the sixth house of acute problems. So there's some sort of upheaval with home, happiness, property, family, education. Then the fifth house lord is Saturn, also gone to the sixth house. So problems with fifth house issues, which is creativity, advisement, and also children. And we already know Jupiter's in the Ardra storm cloud energy, which is indicating transformation and sadness related to sad children or sadness related to children. So Rahu's there in Purva Bhadrapada. That can be ambitious energy, but with losses. Mars is aspecting there. And Mars and Rahu together will bring like technology And Mars and Rahu will bring like a really ambitious drive, even more so than Rahu on its own. So this could be like trying to get pregnant through some sort of technology like IVF, frankly. But because Saturn is in Uttara Bhadrapada, in the sixth house, this could be actually like a loss of a child, like maybe a miscarriage, even, unfortunately. Um, so, yeah, this may be part of what's going on here with this, again, transformation of law and children and stuff like that, is that it can be children lost, through pregnancy or trying to get pregnant. It could also be potentially violence, like Mars and Rahu together. That kind of combination can bring violence. So violence to children of all kinds, whether it's early on or later on. Um, yeah, and then there can be like some sort of maybe legal actions taken or legal advocacy that's happening to protect children. And again, we talked about like the whole trekking, Mormon trek back in 1847, of basically children advocating, and transforming, basically the children were the ones who were, sorry, I just hit my mic. Sorry, that hopefully that wasn't too loud. Um, uh, Actually, it was really the children who were the pioneers and leaders in authority, back in that day. So, yeah, Mars and Rahu can also bring an obsessive energy. So when you bring these energies together, it can be like obsessive energy, technology, law, problems, children's psychology, IVF, adoption, maybe adoption as well, because sixth house can represent like non-biological children. And so since the fifth house lord of children is gone to the sixth house, this could be like adopted children or stepchildren, that sort of thing. But also with Mars, Rahu, and Jupiter in the fifth house, this could be like, things related to the internet, like child trafficking, pretty wild stuff here actually in the fifth house, or like child violence, um, yeah. So there's some sort of like advice or transformation that's going on here, though. So yeah. Okay, so I stopped the video again. That's going to happen a lot during this video. I don't usually try to get through it, in one go. So there's much change in the audio there might be. Yeah, for some reason this was really difficult to get through today. Maybe because Mercury's retrograde, maybe because of what we see here. We have Mars and Rahu, in the fifth house of creativity and technology and you know, that sort of thing. So anyway, so on this slide, getting on to other houses. So on this slide, everything on the left is the same. On the right are my notes for the other houses. So the sixth house, if we pick up there, the Lord is again Swa, Jupiter, and Ardra, and there's a Swa retrograde, Saturn, and Bhadrapada there. Yeah. So and let's see, it's aspected by a Sun-dominated Mars. So Mars and Saturn together, you get engineering energy. Um, and the sixth house, not only enemies and acute issues, acute diseases, injuries, that sort of thing, debts even, but it's daily schedule. So it seems like part of what's going on here, besides maybe changing groups that one associates with, is that there's a really like an re-engineering, I would say, of the schedule to make it more conducive for healing, which is a pretty good thing. And because Mars is sun dominated and sun is in Pushya, the effort here is to create, start creating a more solid, regulated schedule that's based on healing and reducing stress, enjoyment, but also with purpose. But again, because Saturn is the lord of the fourth house and the fifth house, and it's here in the sixth house, then there can be issues with children, employees, home, happiness, that sort of thing. All right, so the seventh house, we've got the lord is Mars. Nothing aspecting here. But, again, Mars just recently crossed K2, so that means that there was definitely a bump in the road forward, because seventh house is bump in the road forward. This could also mean that there's been a bump in a relationship of some kind, personal or professional. Um, the thing there was that, since Mars is about ready to cross into Virgo here in the 12th house, when it does that, it's going to stop aspecting the 5th house, so it'll create less turbulence there, but it'll start aspecting into the 7th house where it will be swa and make the 7th house stronger. And again, the 7th house is personal and professional relationships, independent business, as well as, path in life. So that's where we would get that engineering or not pioneering energy, kind of like what I mentioned when I looked at the Mormon Pioneer Day back in 1847, is that Mars was in Ashwini. So that would almost be recreating Mars and Ashwini in a couple days. So, and it's similar kind of energy there. Because again, Mars is the innovative, rebellious type planet. Yeah. So the other thing is that Mars crossing K2, this could be like releasing like a herd mentality or kind of conventional social mentality, because you have Mars and K2 in the 11th house of clubs, group, and society, and both Mars and K2 are quite rebellious and unconventional. So if there's any socializing here, it would be with probably some unconventional types, frankly. So, and again, Mars is, even though it's dominated by Sun, it's still conjoined basically with K2. So there's going to be this even more unconventional quality to Mars than it normally would have. So there's this path forward is going to be going against the grain. But it's going to include nurturing and, be pleasant on some levels, stabilizing on some levels, after some stormy interactions, because not only did Mars cross K2, but we still got this Jupiter and Ardra, this stormy Jupiter energy. So it looks like there could have been, again, trouble with authority and authority figures. Hold on one second. I got to cut this off one more time. Okay, so we'll see how far we get this time. It's raining now. I go close the window. Anyway, so where did we stop? We were in the 7th house. Okay, now 8th house lord is a Sundi Swa Venus in Mrigashirsha, aspected by Saturn. So again, this is somebody, if this is a person, somebody who's deeply creative, also pretty gracious, I would say. Interest in research, interest in esoterica. But again, especially if this is more of a transit chart, this is somebody who's reconsidering the self-identity. And there can be, I would say, physical, mental stress, fatigue going on here, because this pretty strong Saturn's aspecting the Lugnatia, right, the ruling planet for the whole chart. But again, this is also, if we're looking at this as a transit chart, this is kind of like a butterfly, like chrysalis to butterfly type energy, where somebody's gone deep into their psychology and is reassessing things. And now, again, within a few days, Venus is going to be emerging into Gemini. So, where they may soon be heading or advising some kind of organization. Because again, Venus is the practical counselor, and it'll be with the Jupiter, the spiritual counselor. So we have the two counseling planets in the 9th house of authority, but also institutions and religion, that sort of thing. So then the 9th house here, the Lord is a retrograde Mercury in Aslesha, that snake energy, and then Jupiter swa through that star parivartana, and it's an Ardra. So there's been a storm here, with authority. Probably spiritual authority, maybe legal authority, because Jupiter represents both spirituality and law. But there's some sort of transformation that's been going on with authority and some kind of institution. Probably some losses as well going on here. Let's see. But again, the Lord of the 9th house has gone to the 4th house. I mean, the 10th house, where it's there with this Pushya, Moon and Sun and Pushya. So there's some attempt to heal or stabilize, authority related issues here. After a stormy bit, because the thing is, about a month ago, not only was Jupiter in Ardra, but Sun was in Ardra. So you had those two planets in the storm cloud energy. And now, Sun is starting to move forward. It's in a pretty, again, in that stabilizing Pushya energy. And within a few days of this, or a week or so, Mercury's also going to be in Pushya. So that'll be time for whatever's been going on in the 9th house to, kind of ground itself and get more stable again. Then let's see. So the ninth house, spiritual transformation, legal transformation. Also, because Mercury's the Lord here, and that's usually words. It's in Aslesha, so this can be emotionally stable, healing words and decisions after stormy leadership. And advice. Also, this could be a diplomat energy, especially because Venus will be joining Jupiter soon in Gemini. That's a very diplomatic, gracious type energy, especially when those two get together. Even if they are in Ardra, you're still going to get, when you have a natural benefic in these kind of tougher, nakshatras, you're going to get the best, kind of nicest versions of like Ardra energy. So you're going to get somebody who's like advising through storms, who's diplomatic, who's sort of like grace under fire. You could think about it that way. Yeah. Um, and again, grandkids, we could be talking about here because Jupiter represents children and it's in the fifth house from the fifth and ninth house. So that's going to be kids of kids, meaning grandkids. So there's some sort of, long lived legacy with children. So if this was again, a person here, it looks like grandchildren might be in the works for them, Um, So, then 10th house, again, we have the Swan, new moon, and sun, both in Pushya with the Swan, Mercury, and Aslesha. So, communication here, again, trying to create emotional stability and nurturing work and daily activity and reputation. So, there's some real effort here and leadership in that direction. But there can also be a loss, again, through social disruption, I would say. Um, Mainly because the reason why I'm saying loss through social disruption, or this could even be like loss of a colleague, like a work colleague, because the sun is going to bring this Leo energy from the 11th house where you have this Mars that just crossed K2, and it's going to bring it into the 10th house here. So that could be like the letting go or, moving on of a colleague, and saying some nice words about that. Maybe having potentially a farewell party or something like that. Yeah. So what else? In the 11th house, the Lord is the sun, and we have a sun-dominated Mars, and a Swa Venus influenced K2. So again, we have some nice energies influencing these otherwise chaotic planets of Mars and K2. So again, this is going to be unusual, unconventional, renegade type groups, but rebels with the cause, because K2's in. It was just in Uttara Phalguni. It's moving into Purva Phalguni. They're kind of swapping places here once Mars crosses K2. And then Mars is going from Purva Phalguni to Uttara Phalguni. Both of them are related to a hammock. But Uttara Phalguni also has the kind of notion of having, in addition to having relaxation, enjoyment with the hammock, it has this energy of having a purpose for the enjoyment as well. So again, this could be like rebels with a cause type thing. Um, and again, there's some effort here to soothe the mind and emotions because the Lord of this 11th house is the Sun in Pushya. So it might be like trying to establish peace with different groups through unusual means. And for some reason, what came to mind is panda diplomacy, like by China. I don't know why. I guess because it's an unusual sort of, unconventional way to create diplomacy. But, most people think the panda bears are cute. And then, China has given some panda bears to different countries around the world. And so, in its own way, and there was also at some point like ping pong diplomacy or something. I guess there were some ping pong games set up between, I think, China and other countries. And that was another way to sort of, build some bridges after, some, political fallout and stuff like that. So, stuff like that might be going on to try to reestablish, you know, uh, better relationships, I would say. But this could also be like removing oneself from the fray. Like that's the diplomacy is diplomacy with self. And nurturing self is that this group or whatever is not really supporting me or providing the whatever I was looking for, interest level or interaction level or, intellectual stimulation or whatever it is, that might have been sought out initially. Um, so yeah. And then let's see, then the 12th house lord is Mercury, aspected by Saturn. So we have got Virgo in the 12th house here of losses and expenditures. So Virgo is all about sorting things out in a very tangible way, since it's a dual earth sign. And again, Mercury, the lord of Virgo, is in Aslesha. So there's some healing process going on here, sorting through things out. And again, we have this massive Saturn there. So it's like sorting through, like a kind of a long-term sorting through process of losses and obstacles and because the only way to really recreate the self is to see where you've been and see how you've handled things in the past, and then to do your best to, make changes there so you don't end up, you know, um, like what is it they say, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So, what is a definition of insanity? So it's that kind of thing. But yeah, but again, the Saturn that's aspecting the 12th house is related to the 4th house and the 5th house, which is land and children, healing. This also could be this new moon and Pushya, since you can't see the moon since it's right there, behind the sun. This could be like, again, if somebody was setting up a business here, consultancy of some kind, this could be trying to help new mothers or people are trying to become new mothers in terms of the challenges there, especially if it's related to getting pregnant or maintaining a pregnancy or, you know, maybe unfortunately losing a child pretty young. Um, some sort of, there could be some effort there related to all that. Okay, so that's the main chart. Now I'm going to go on to the amshas or subdivisional charts and see what we see there. Okay, so on this slide we have some relationship amshas. So it's just a little, background here if you're not familiar. These subzodiacs amshas, also known as subdivisional charts. Basically, the way these are derived is by slicing and dicing up the main chart into smaller bits, and then you create these charts. And these subdivisional charts give more nuance, but they're mostly used for timing. Um, Related to different areas of life. So these two on this slide, at the top we have the Navamsha D9 for spouse and partnerships, and then below it we have the Drake and a D3 for siblings. So, and then what I have also near the top here, it says the Dasha period Saturn, K2, Saturn, Venus, moving to Saturn, K2, Mercury on September 1st. So I've circled these planets because what we're looking for is we're watching how these planets are shifting and changing, like when we go from Saturn K2, Saturn Venus to, so basically we're moving from Venus energy to Mercury energy for the most part, okay? Because we've got the Saturn and K2 that are consistent, but then we're going from Venus to Mercury. So basically what we're looking for is one, what do these planets symbolize? Like Venus represents emotion and social grace, Mercury represents analytical mind and decision making and communication. So those are very different energies just in and of themselves. But then we have to see where they land. Are they in a positive or negative house? Are they, strong or weak? Are they with natural malefics or natural benefics? Because that'll change what these planets will give during their, period, the Shah period. Okay. So the Navamsha D9 spouse and partnership. So you can see K2 is not well placed here. And it's but it's exalted. So that's nice. I mean, it's better for, even though it's a natural malefic planet, when we're looking at the sub zodiacs, it's better for the natural malefics to be strong. But we do have Saturn aspect in K2. So this Saturn is sort of sinking, frankly, K2. That's not going to be the greatest period. Um, Although Saturn is in a positive house. And we've got Venus there, Sun, Moon. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, Saturn is not it might be helped a little bit by Moon and Venus. Venus is debilitated. So yeah, I mean Saturn's is like okay, like it's a decent, period, the Saturn, and that's the main planetary period, the Mahadasha. Um, and Mercury might actually make when we shift to Mercury, that might actually build this, excuse me, this chart, this area of life up a bit, because Mercury is going to be aspecting the Lugna, which it owns, because it's a Gemini Lugna in this chart. So that'll support the whole chart, but it's going to be more of like a rational type of energy, coming through spouse and partnerships. Yeah. Venus, in the Venus period, it's debilitated. So it's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. At least Venus is in a positive house. But the thing about Venus is that it's aspecting the 10th house where it's exalted, which again brings us to the idea that there's going to be quite a bit of focus on 10th house issues, which again is daily activity, work, and reputation. So the spouse may also be, working on something like that. Yeah. Saturn also. The other thing about this Saturn, Sun, Moon, Venus combination is that there's two soul enemy relationships in there. Saturn and Sun, and then and Moon. Those three there's two soul enemy relations. So there's gonna be obstacles and challenges here. So I do see strength in this chart, but there's challenge as well. So it's a mixed bag, I would say. Then the Drake and a D3 for siblings. Venus and Mercury are not well placed. K2 is Swa in the 11th house with a Swa Mars. So, and these are soul enemies. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is basically recreating the 11th house in the natal chart. So, again, focus on changing income and groups here. Yeah, a lot of maybe loss or change turnover there. Then you could see Saturn uh, is aspecting the 12th house of lost expenditures, and it's in the 10th house of work, daily activities, and then it's aspecting the 4th house of home and happiness, and it's aspecting the 7th house of spouse like partners, business partners, independent business, and way forward. So Saturn is really dominating this chart right now. So this is going to create obstacles for siblings, which in the main chart, Saturn was aspecting the 3rd house, which is related to siblings. So it's kind of more of the same, really. But the Saturn, the main Mahadasha, is going to bring, it's going to be okay. So there's probably going to be restructuring here. At least it's not like debilitated in a negative house where it would be worse. But there's going to be challenges here, delays, obstacles, work, home, relationships, path forward. So, yeah, that's just the nature of Saturn that we're dealing with. In this slide, we have more relationships. We have the Saptamsha D7 for children, then the Dwadashamsha D12 for parents and grandparents. So in the D7, grahas, they're all well placed, so that's nice. Venus is Swa. Saturn is exalted, but it aspects the Lugna where it's debilitated. So that's going to bring challenge to the whole chart of children, which again, we were seeing a lot of challenge with children in the main chart. There's also a parivartana between exchange of houses between Sun and Rahu. So that's going to bring more of this leadership energy, but also ambition energy. And so we're going to get this like sort of like we have in the main chart. So it kind of is recreating it. We have Mars and K2 again in the 11th house, and we have Sun and Moon there and Rahu. And then on the other side, we have again Rahu, Sun, Mars, and Moon. So that's it's tough because Rahu and Ketu on their own bring things like mental health issues, obsession, compulsion, that kind of energy. And then you have Moon in there. So when we have Moon on the Rahu Ketu axis, that gets, even more emotional, like obsessive type energy. When we have Mars there, that's going to be like obsessive actions. And then you have Sun there. So you have this like really wild, obsessive kind of leadership energy going on, over the 511 axis of children counseling, and then groups and income. This is not, luckily Venus is Swan Mercury, so there's probably a lot of positive talk, or at least, um, gains through relationships and stuff like this. But there's some really obsessive, unusual leadership energy going on here. And again, this might relate to, as I said in the main chart, because of this Jupiter was in the main chart, it was Jupiter, Mars, and Rahu in the fifth house. That could be related to somebody who's really pushing for a child, to get pregnant or have a child, or a lot of problems with children, such as not being able to get pregnant or not being able to maintain pregnancy, or, losing children by unfortunate circumstances with their young, and then trying to change laws and get authorities involved there, or at least, um, some sort of spiritual advice, because that Jupiter is an Ardra, right? The sadness of children, it keeps kind of popping up. Um, so it looks like here, even though as a first pass all the grahas are well placed, this combination with K2, is pretty tough, I would say. And then Saturn again, at least Saturn is exalted in the seventh house, so there will be a way forward, but it's going to be, a slog. You know. So yeah. Then on the D12 here, parents and grandparents, Mercury and Venus are not well placed. There's a parivartana between Saturn and Mercury. So again, that's going to bring a very like objective, separatist type of energy, um, and not that different actually. Because again, in the main chart, what was it? Saturn was lord of the fifth house, or sorry, fourth house. That's related to mom, and then Mercury was lord of the ninth house, is related to dad. So, and then you can see here, like, with the parivartana. Oh, wait a minute here. With the parivartana of Saturn and Mercury, that means you're going to get, when you start running this Saturn K2 Mercury period, you're going to get Saturn K2 Mercury in the 10th house. That's a lot of just very, uh, again, very distant type of energy here. And because in the ninth house there is a Jupiter in Ardra, that could be a parent that had a lot of, was a very stormy type of personality, you know. And then the mom, right, the fourth house, the lord of that was a Saturn retrograde in its own star of Uttara Bhadrapada. That's somebody who's just trying to stay above the fray, in terms of chaos and stuff like that. So, and because that Saturn went to the sixth house, it's like, it might be somebody who's always kind of in a bit of trouble somehow or another. And so from this, it's sort of this D12 chart is basically kind of reiterating that. Venus will bring a little bit of change, when it does happen, because the eighth house here relates to changes and endings. But Venus is aspect in the second house where it's swa with sun and moon. So there might be a bit of communication with parents during this Venus subperiod. But then once Saturn, K2, Mercury rolls around, I think it's going to be pretty quiet, separatist, maybe even a little bit cold, icy, it might seem. Because again, Mercury, K2, Saturn, these are not the warm and fuzzy type of planets. So, yeah. Then on this slide, we have career and education, the Sadamsha D24 for education, Dashamsha D10 for career reputation status. So at the top, Saturn, K2, Venus are not well placed, not a big surprise because what was it? The fourth house, the Lord there is Saturn. It's gone to the sixth house, so that's not a good indication for formal education. Um, and you can see that 7 out of 9 planets are in negative houses here. That's a Balarisha yoga. That means that there's very few times when education may move forward for somebody with this sort of chart. Um, The lucky thing, though, if there is a lucky thing, Saturn is Swa in the 8th house, and Venus is Swa in the 12th house. And the dispositor of Mercury is the Swa Venus in the 12th house. So what this may mean is that during this Mercury period, although Saturn is very strong, Saturn's aspecting Mercury, this may be somebody who has trouble getting advice, good advice about education and careers, or, well, not careers, but education, and is maybe seeking out some sort of advice regarding the difficulties in education. And it may be that the advice that they get is that they would be better off involved in like independent studies or online studies or something like that that's a bit unconventional. Because again, this Mercury, the landlord of Mercury here in the 5th house is Venus. Venus is Swa, but it's with Rahu and Ketu here. So this Rahu and Ketu are going to make Venus a bit unusual because that's their energy. So again, yeah, you can see a lot of challenges here with education here. And then once in a while, it looks like the door's going to open, but maybe in a more independent, unconventional way. Then the Dashamsha D10 for career, reputation, status. Well, here we go. Because the pravraja yoga, that life focused yoga, is in the 10th house, and it was two of the sun and moon were in Pushya, and then Mercury was in Aslesha. It's moon is Swa, Mercury Swa. Well, look at what we have here. All of the planets were running. Saturn is in its own sign; it's Swa. Ketu is Swa and has Digbala, directional strength. Venus is Swa and has directional strength. And then Mercury is Swa, even though it's in a negative house. But it is in a Shubh Sankhya yoga, positive yoga. So this Mercury should bring about positive change because of its relative location to this exalted moon. So this is basically all the planets that are being run here, Saturn, Ketu, Venus, Mercury, are the strongest planets for this person. So this is a big career time boost for this person. And that may be part of why, there's a life focus there is a transit chart. Okay. And the thing is, this Saturn is aspecting Venus where it's exalted. So you got this really strong 4th house. The 4th house, again, related to home, creativity, because Venus is there, Saturn, because of this like building energy, long-term kind of building energy. Rahu's there, which can be technology. This might be like a home-based business, related to like online creative, like a content creator type energy here. Yeah, and then K2 Swa with Venus, because Venus aspects the 10th house. This is going to be unusual but powerful daily work. And this could be like a practical advisor regarding spirituality, because K2 can represent, like a spiritual seeker, somebody who's unconventional, who's like really seeking like a spiritual meaning to life in its more positive form. And Venus is going to be aspecting there. So it's again like, it's kind of like the Venus that's catching up to Jupiter and Gemini in the 9th house of like, how do we take this spiritual transformation and download it, like really grounded in reality and daily living? So, and then Jupiter is doing what? Jupiter's aspected by Mars and Sun and Moon. So Mars is aspecting its own house in the 5th house where Jupiter is. That's going to be a very transformative leadership, spiritual advice type energy going on here. So yeah, it looks like, this is like a massively positive, time for career, reputation, status for this person. So good for them. And on this slide, we have the Ekadamsha D11 and the Chatradamsha D4 for income, public support, then assets. So in the D11, all the planets are well placed. Mercury and Saturn are Swa. Venus has a Swa dispositor of Mercury, so those are strong. Ketu's in the 2nd house, so there's going to be gains through unusual means. this Swa Mercury in the fourth house. This is like sorting out, again, this is Virgo energy, sorting out home, happiness, potentially an independent business as well. When we have a Mercury in its own house, we tend to get independent business. And then let's see, Venus is in Gemini, so strong disposer plus Mars. Mars and Venus together can get like design energy, like design work, but also implementing practical actions to again manifest ideas. Then the Saturn that's Swan in Aquarius in the ninth house, this is going to be leading public mental with Sun and Moon, leading like public mental emotional ideology, because this is an Aquarius here. And Saturn in its own sign, that can also bring like very traditional type of uh, energy to it. Sometimes Saturn in its own sign can actually bring also like energy related specifically to India. So maybe there's some sort of Indian practice or Vedic art or something like that that's part of the institution, uh, or part of the authority or boss relationship that's going on here. But yeah, so income is looking pretty good at this time during these dasha periods. The chatra tamsha D4 for assets. Well, Saturn and Venus are not well placed. There's a parivartana between Saturn and Mercury, so there's exchange of houses. Let's see. I would say this is like more about like grounding ideas. Because the seventh house will be strong, independent business, and the 12th house will be strong. So this could be, and Saturn's a bhumi karka, so this could be about like, you know, uh, getting very practical about ideas like overseas real estate, possibly, or even building some sort of global business. Like this would be more of like, I think, a storefront type business, like a physical, tangible business. Um, yeah. Then Venus is in the eighth house, so there can be some changes or endings during this particular moment. There might be some change in assets. And then, which makes sense too, because Mars is in the main chart. Mars is aspecting, after it's crossed K2, it's aspecting second house of assets. So there might be like a release of assets to some degree. And then K2 is debilitated, plus Mars in the 11th house again. We keep getting Mars and K2 in the 11th house. So again, change in income and groups and that sort of thing. So, yeah, we keep seeing that over and over again, don't we? Yeah, there might be some unusual streams of income coming in here, or income related to unconventional groups or technology. Could be. Okay, then on this side we have the health amsha. So we have the Tajik Shashtamsha D6 for acute issues, then the Tajik Ashtamamsha D8 for chronic issues, and the Bamsha D27 for strength and resilience. So in the D6 for acute issues, Saturn is not well placed, and it's got two soul enemies with it. So a lot of problems here with Saturn for acute issues, which is not surprising given Saturn's in the sixth house in the main chart. And then Saturn is dominating Mercury because Mercury's in a sign of Saturn. Saturn's also aspecting Mercury. So this alone, if we're talking about health, this alone is going to bring a lot of nervous, energy to somebody because Saturn is like neuromuscular issues as well as anxiety, doubts, fears, and Mercury is the mind, the logical mind, but also the peripheral nerves. So this could literally be like analysis paralysis because we're also looking at the fifth house of advice. The fifth house also relates to the upper GI and heart. So this could literally be like palpitations or nervous stomach, problems digesting food. But again, like problems also just making decisions, communicating, that sort of thing. Luckily, Venus is exalted, so at least for the moment, there seems to be some sort of healing path forward that opens up, which is good. So this might be like some lucky hit that, the Venus Swan in the eighth house in the main chart with seeking, in that Mrigashirsha energy. Now we've got fireworks going on in this. It's like it just keeps coming today. Yeah, anyway. So then in the Lugna here, we've got Mars and Ketu with Rahu. That's going to be some unusual actions going on here. And then Venus is aspecting there as well, but Venus is debilitated there. So there's some unusual creative actions related to, I think, improving the situation. But this is not acute. This acute situation is actually long term because Saturn is the Mahadasha. Um, so Saturn's not going away anytime soon. Even though there's this window of opportunity, let's say, with Venus going on here. Even though it's a blip, because Venus is a sub period, right? Then we have the D8 for chronic issues. Again, Saturn's not well placed, but it is exalted. I put SWA. It's actually exalted, not SWA. So this could be retreat, rest, fatigue, trying to slow down. And then the Saturn is aspecting Venus and Ketu, which are with Mars and Rahu. So you've got 4 natural malefics on Venus. So Venus may be trying to, try to advise, what's going on in the 9th house. So again, father, authority, government, religion, institution, these sorts of things. But there's a lot of, issues going on here. And let's see, Venus is a soul enemy of Rahu. Ketu's a soul enemy of Mars. I mean, this is not, again, this is a really convoluted mess going on here in the 9th house, which is not too surprising because Jupiter was in Ardra in the 9th house. And so it's, yeah, this is a sticky long-term situation here, I would say. At least Mercury, once Mercury rolls around, again, Mercury's not might bring about sorting through 11th house issues, which have been challenged because Mars cross Ketu. So this could be like, sorting through groups and finding the ones that are supportive or positive. This could be helping groups or support groups, health-related support groups, because we got Virgo here. So this might be like, even though there's some release of groups that we've been seeing consistently, this might be finally finding some that are supportive to health, physical and mental health, emotional health. But yeah, this 9th house is a pretty challenge for the D8. Then we have the Bamsha D27 for strength and resilience. Mercury is SWA, but not well placed. But that should bring about some positive endings or changes related to ideas because it's in Gemini. Ketu's in the 5th house, so there's some unusual advice here. And its dispositor is a SWA, Jupiter. So this could be related to, again, spiritual speech. Yeah, some advice related to, this could be like, and technology. This might be like some uplifting or spiritual, not religious, spiritual or uplifting type of like podcasts, that are helpful here. It could be that type of stuff. And then Venus is here with the SWA sun and moon in the 4th house, and I mean the 10th house, and they're aspecting the 4th house. So again, daily practical actions to promote emotional happiness, health at work and home, balance, and then Saturn is in the 9th house. So again, there's some drag here, going on in the 9th house. So again, father, authority, government, institutions, that kind of thing. And again, that's not going away. Saturn is also aspecting the 9th house in the D6. So you can see that in the D6, D8, and D27, all 3 of them have Saturn aspecting or in the 9th house. So that's a long-term issue there. Although it seems like, with the D27, there's strength and resilience. Yeah, I mean, it's not like this D27 looks like the D7, right, for children. I mean, that would be a really tough D27 for somebody to have. But the Saturn in the ninth house here in the D27, it's in Cancer. So again, that's going to be home and emotion. So emotional, this is emotional issues related to authority and institutions here. Okay, and then on this last slide here, we have spirituality and worship. So at the top of D5, Panchamsha for innate spirituality, and then the Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship here. So in the top chart, K2 is not well placed, but it's Swa with a Swa disposer. That's a very strong K2 there. Pretty wild. So that's going to bring some positive, but unusual, unexpected, innovative changes of some kind. Venus is not well placed in the 12th house, so this might be, at least temporarily, during the self-reflective period, some sort of retreat or rest going on. Saturn's in the 11th house, and it's aspected by a swa, or it's aspected by Jupiter, where it's swa. So this could be, the end of endings here, because Saturn is the lord of the 12th house, and it's gone 12 houses away. So it's the 12th house is losses, and then when the lord goes 12 houses, that's a bhavam Saturn. So it's like a loss of losses. So it's like trying to squelch, or stave off the losses that have been going on here. And then also with this Jupiter, it's like spiritualizing the losses. Like where's the silver lining to all of this? All the challenges that have come along. Like I think I don't know if I mentioned it or if I got lost in all the different trials I've had. Stops and starts, because I might have mentioned it the first time. I got about halfway through the talk and realized what happened. Oh, then the software froze or something, and then I loaded it up again and realized that nothing had been saved, so I had to start over again. But one of the things I talked about was how, like, what I find in my life, I end up going through challenges or whatever, and then I work my way through them, and then somehow people, it's like people can smell it on me or something from miles away. And then I'll get like 2, 3, 5 patients all basically with the same issue coming in. And it actually was very helpful that I had gone through that issue, because I can help them more because I had gone through it myself. So it's that kind of same thing where it's like, I could be like, oh, this happens, that happens, or whatever. But nowadays I'm like, oh, I wonder who's, I start whatever, if I get a little sick or something, I'm like, oh, I wonder who I'm going to help by going through this experience. you know, it's like it doesn't really kind of stick to me. It kind of, it's like water off a duck's back, because I've just been through it so many times. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to help somebody by going through this challenging time. So we'll see how that plays out. But it could be that kind of thing, spiritualizing these challenges. Um, Mercury's in the ninth house with the Rahu, and then aspected by Jupiter and Mars. Those are the two education planets, the ambition planet with, action and law. It's going to be learning new and unusual ways to bring about change. And this could be retreat energy as well, satsang energy. What I'm seeing here is basically there's like changes in community here. Because Jupiter is both on the 11th house of secular groups as well as the ninth house of satsang, of, spiritual community. So, and then we have the Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship. Saturn's not well placed, but it's Swa, so that'll bring about long-term, positive, sustainable changes, most likely. Mercury and Venus are in parivartana exchange here, so, and you can see all these planets in the 7th house and 8th house. So again, way forward, building relationships, building partnerships, independent business, deep psychology. You can see, like, it's almost like the pravraja yoga that we had in the 10th house in the main chart, but you can see now this is all like moving forward. So I think either way here, there's strength. It might just be a matter of personal preference as to which way people may go or integrate these two ways of more of a creative, unique expression of spirituality versus more of a formal worship. But they're both pretty strong. I would say of the planets running now, I would say the D20 is stronger because of the parivartana. Yeah. So yeah, and that makes sense too. Like even like the story I told about the Mormons who, Mormon children mostly, who went all the way from Nebraska to Utah. I mean, that was a long, long trek, and took a lot of. It was really about deep changes and support and strength and again, very spiritual group. To this day, as far as I know. So uh, very strong in their community. So that's what you kind of see here as a form of worship, being really quite strong. Let me see. So everything in the D20 should be strong because Saturn, Swa, Moon, and Sun are in Mercury, which is in a friend sign with two natural malefics, but then through parivarsana, it goes back to its own sign. So basically, everything's really strong in the D20. More so, well, let's see. Venus goes to Saturn, Saturn goes to Jupiter, Jupiter goes to this K2 Mars. Oh wow, yeah, it's really strong. And then, well, sort of the same. Everything's really strong in the D5 too, because they all end up leading to basically SWA planets, as landlords. So again, I think you could go either way with, personal or more institutional type of spirituality here. Let's see. Yep. So thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. Thanks so much for your support in general, for all the ways you do support my work in the channel. Whether it's liking or subscribing or posting comments or sending in donations. So thank you for all of that. Again, all of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my consults playlist. They can be found there. For famous birth charts, if you like to learn that way, I would check out my birth charts archive list 2025 video, where I list all the famous charts I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. I do offer individual birth chart readings. You can email heartlightastra@yahoo.com for more info on that. And then my other YouTube channel on natural medicine, where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, yoga, homeopathy, naturopathic medicine. The name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too for you. All right, so as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so take good care. Namaste.